Good evening to all the brothers and sisters in the Dharma. Welcome again to our fortnightly Metta sharing session. Didi Shokchin, can I have the first slide, please? Welcome to MettaNet. Stay connected. Well, we shall start with our puja for this evening, and we shall put our palms in Anjali, and we shall start the puja. Vandana, homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Next. Tisarana, 3 refuges. Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dhammang saranang gacchami. Sanghang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami. Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Next. Panchasila, the 5 precepts. I observe the precepts to abstain from destroying living beings. I observe the precepts to abstain from taking things not given. I observe the precepts to abstain from sexual misconduct. I observe the precepts to abstain from false speech. I observe the precepts to abstain from consuming anything that causes intoxications or heedlessness. Next. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Next. Okay. Now, who are we? We are the Johor Gladians. That is under the umbrella of the Decradle, which the Decradle is actually represented by the Center for Research and Dharma Leadership Enhancement. Next. And in the Johor Gladians, we do a lot of outreach work to the school children, to the like-minded Buddhists. And we also have a lot of Metta in action. We have visited the old folks. We have visited the monastery, helping them in the financial resources, helping them in the human resources when they needed volunteers to help them in their projects. And we also do Buddhist networking among the Buddhist community. We always get in touch with them, and we do the networking with these people. Next. MettaNet, stay connected. Simple Buddhism for everyone. If you're interested or you have got friends who like to join us, you're more than welcome to join us in the Johor Gladians, where we have our Zoom meeting sharing fortnightly and on Sunday at 8 p.m. And if you wish to join, this brother SK Lim, which you can contact, or any of the brothers in the MettaNet session, which you can get connected with us. Next. Like and follow our Facebook page for more upcoming online activities. Search, I like and I follow on the facebook.com/Metta Buddhist Fellowship. Before we introduce the speaker, we shall do some recap on the earlier 38 blessings that we have actually done. I shall just have a quick recap on the following. The first one, not to associate with fools, to associate with the wise, and honor those who are worthy of honor. This is blessing supreme. To live in a suitable locality, to have done meritorious actions in the past, and to have set oneself on the right course towards emancipation. This is blessing supreme. Vast learning, perfect handicraft, a highly trained discipline, and pleasant speech. This is blessing supreme. The support of mother and father, the cherishing of wife and children, and peaceful occupations. This is blessing supreme. Liberal giving, righteous conduct, the helping of relatives, and blameless actions. This is blessing supreme. To abstain from evil, no desire for evil. Abstain from intoxicants and be diligent in wholesome practices. This is blessing supreme. Next. To have reverence, to be humble, to be content, to be grateful, to hear the Dhamma at the right time. This is blessing supreme. To be patient and obedient, to associate with monks, and to have religious discussions on due occasions. This is blessing supreme. To practice self-restraint, to live according to the Noble Eightfold Path, to understand the Four Noble Truths, to attain Nibbana. This is blessing supreme. To be unaffected by worldly conditions, to be free from sorrows, to be free from defilements, to have lasting peace and security. This is blessing supreme. The highlight of tonight's talk, Dr. Punna's secret profile. As you can see in the picture here, there is actually a lot of hidden secret profile of Dr. Wong. His passions for good food, his passions for Japanese sashimi, sushi. That is the blessing that he always gets from all the good kalyanamitas that he's surrounded with. His passions for the kings of fruits, the durians, and his passions for the pig trotters, all the good food, and his dream of actually owning the Harley Davidson. That is actually a lot of things that is hidden, that is not known to others. But the best of all is that he is a very learned person. Next. Okay, now tonight we will talk a little bit of Dr. Wong. Actually, Dr. Wong needs no introduction. He is a known, well-known speaker, and he has actually written two books. One on the Walking the Buddha's Footprint, and that was actually published and written in the year 2016. And subsequently, his next Dhamma book, The Breaking Myth, in 2020. And he was actually very honored to be awarded the 2017 Nalanda Awards in Dhamma Dutta in recognition of explanatory and meritorious services to the Buddha Satsana. Without further ado, I shall invite Dr. Punna to share tonight's final sessions of the GPS of Life, the 38 Supreme Blessing. Over to you.
Well, thank you, and Sukihontu to everyone here tonight. It's good to be sharing to Dhamma family, friends from all over the region. And I see friends from Singapore and further afield here as well. Allow me to share my screen. Yeah. Can I confirm that you can see my screen, please?
Yes, we can.
Very good. All right. Tonight, I've been tasked to give an overall view on the Mangala Sutta and emphasis on the last 8 stanzas. The Mangala Sutta is actually found in 2 parts in the Pali Canon. It's found in the Sutta Nipata, and it's also found in the Khuddaka Nikaya. In Chinese, it's a Jixiang Jing. Now, if you look at the Mangala Sutta, it actually gives us a roadmap, career guidance path, as we would be told in school, on how we can walk this life, attaining peace, happiness, and liberation. Well, I call it for many years the GPS of life, because nowadays, most of us use GPS when we drive, and without Waze or Google Map, many of us are lost. So this sutta actually gives us a GPS of life. And I would first want to begin by clarifying certain terms. Many of what we are very familiar with today in common consciousness came from the translations of the giants who translated the Buddha's teachings in the late 19th and early 20th century. And because of them, many words become literally cast in stone in our consciousness. And it's very hard to change because it's within common consciousness. Just to give you an example, in the Noble Eightfold Path, people always refer to Sammasamadhi as right concentration. And it's literally impossible to change because it is so much in our common consciousness. But actually, right concentration is a very inaccurate translation of Sammasamadhi. Right concentration is in fact quite misleading. Sammasamadhi would be actually far better translated as right stillness. But that word didn't exist in 19th century and early 20th century. Right stillness would actually be a far better translation for Sammasamadhi. And it is very interesting that if you look at the Chinese agamas, they do not translate Sammasamadhi as right concentration. It is translated as Zhen Ding, calmness, stillness. So similarly with Mangala, we often look at it as translated 100 years ago as blessings. Now, all words carry with it a baggage. And when we hear the word blessings, most people tend to think that, oh, that came from somewhere. Somebody gave you a blessing, or some divine power gave you a blessing. It's an external thing that gave rise to this blessing. Well, that is actually not what is meant in the Mangala Sutta. In the Mangala Sutta, what it means is that if you have this condition, then this condition will lead you to happiness, peace, and that is what many people consider, oh, a blessing in my life. I have happiness and peace. But it doesn't come from an external force or an external being or some stratosphere somewhere. It has to be within you and by you. And if you have this condition, it drives away suffering, unhappiness. So there are 38 steps, which I will very quickly go through, emphasis on the last 8 as requested. And these 38 steps lead you to both mundane and supramundane happiness. And these steps are each leading to the next, starting with you as a young person. And for those of you who are children, grandchildren, or you yourself are still young, this is of particular relevance. So the sutta is actually taught in Jetavana Monastery. And many of you had actually been to Jetavana Monastery. It's a beautiful monastery just outside the city wall. And this course is actually not given to humans. It was actually given to the Devas who came and asked the Buddha, what are the conditions which will give rise to happiness? because the Devas could not agree among themselves as to which one condition would give rise to the most happiness, translated today as blessings. So the Buddha, instead of giving one answer, gave 38 steps, because there is no one answer which could satisfactorily provide the correct answer to this question. And it begins with something that every one of us here can reflect on and see how practical, how pragmatic the Buddha is. Many gods and men have pondered on auspicious signs, wishing for blessings. Please tell us the greatest blessing, singular. But the Buddha gave the answer in plural, 38 of them. And he began by saying to avoid the company of fools and to associate with the wise. Now, I think this is probably the most important thing that has happened to me when I was a teenager. Had I associated with people who are not so nice, I would have become a fool and also probably not so nice. The dichotomy of our life really begins when we are very impressionable teenagers and then go on to early adulthood. And so thankfully, I had the conditions of associating with very good friends, some of whom are in this photo. And standing in the middle is one of the great teachers who taught us, who really had a big influence on our lives. So the Buddha began with a very pragmatic teaching. Avoid the company of fools. You'll mix with people who do drugs, who don't study, who fool around, lepak, etc., etc. A very high chance you are going to be like them. Instead, the Buddha said, associate with the wise. And then you tend to follow them and the ways of their life. And to honor those who are worthy of honor. This is the greatest blessing. So what kind of friends do you have if you are young or even a young adult now or even at this stage of our life? Now, if you have good friends, good spiritual friends, which are called Kayana Mittas, they tend to encourage you on the path. They tend to direct you when you go off the path. Yes, of course, you are happy, you joke, you laugh, you tease each other, you go for meals, you might travel overseas for holidays, etc., etc. But you all will do this within the guidelines of the Buddha Dharma. And so they are beautiful spiritual people. They are noble friends. And it is very important because you can be 67 years old, mixed with the not so wise, and drink or literally waste all your hard-earned money and resources. So we must not follow after fools or take them as a standard for conduct or personal guidance, but follow the wise. And for all of us here who are parents, I think we all understand how important this is. And that is why as parents, we have to make sure that our children do not mix with the wrong company. So we wax and wane in our qualities according to whom we associate with. And again, this is a picture taken with some of those very same friends 3 decades later. The Venerable Ananda actually stated to the Buddha that spiritual friendship is half of the holy life. And the Buddha replied, not so, Ananda. Don't say that it's half. It is actually the whole of the holy life. And I think all of us here can appreciate how important our spiritual friends are with regards to the path that we are walking. They encourage us. They really drag us out when we are in trouble or when we are depressed. They make sure that, yes, we'll do happy things, crazy things, but never out of line things. So one of you may ask, then what happened to the fool? Who is going to teach them? Well, yes, of course, many of us are needed to teach the fool, but you first and foremost have to be not a fool yourself. Because if you are a fool and you're trying to teach a fool, then you're just going to have 2 fools. So for you to be engaged with them, you have to be advanced in self-control, loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, and reasonably immune to their negative influence. And then, yes, Of course, you will live for a purpose of trying to help them and to lead them to a better life. But make sure that you're not a Ni Pusa. The Chinese have a saying that the Ni Pusa Kuo Jiang, you are a mud bodhisattva trying to cross a river, you're just going to dissolve in that river. So make sure you are not a Ni Pusa, or you cannot even help yourself, let alone help another person. And to honor those worthy of honor, this is the greatest blessing. Well, learning, practicing the practice of honoring the honorable is the very foundation of humility. The very foundation of humility. Then it goes on to another set of auspicious conditions. One is to live in a suitable place. Now, you can well imagine if we are living in a place which is not very suitable. For example, let's say you are living in a war zone, you are living in a very poor country, you're living in a destitute, then it's going to be very difficult for you to have an education, much less learn the Dhamma. So to live in a suitable place, it's really a great auspicious sign, a great blessing under inverted comma. Thank your parents for that. You have done good deeds in the past and to be on right path. For those who didn't know, this was my old house about almost close to 20 years ago. It was a lovely old rumbling house, but that's where my children grew up. And that's Sister Sharon's station wagon, because she needed to ferry the children around. That's why we bought a station wagon for her. Good deeds done in the past doesn't mean past life. When you understand the Buddha Dharma, you understand that when we say good deeds done in the past, it can mean 1 hour ago, 1 day ago, 1 week ago, 1 month, 1 year, or 1 lifetime ago, or many lifetimes ago. All that we are doing now conditions the next day, the next week, the next month. It is a river that is continuously flowing. So we have to continue to do good deeds, because the good deeds that you do today, tomorrow becomes the good deeds done in the past. The right path. It says you have to set yourself in the right course. Early in life, you have to make a decision of what you want in life. Some people have very mundane decisions. They say, I want to be very rich. I want to stay in a 3-story bungalow house in Horizon Hill. I want to buy a big car. I want to have designer dresses. Well, those are mundane aims. They will give rise to temporary happiness. And very soon you're going to be suffering because of that determination to achieve that. So the right path here is the right path that is wholesome, that will lead to liberation, to freedom. And when you make a decision to do this, mid-career, early in your career, or even now, then the rest of your life is directed towards that goal. And, you know, within the Buddha Dharma, within the Eightfold Path, you have right livelihood. Many people are not aware that the Buddha very clearly put livelihood as part of spiritual practice. If you look at the Noble Eightfold Path, you've got right speech, right action, right livelihood. Whatever you do every day as your livelihood, whether you are a man selling engine oil, or an engineer building buildings, or somebody making use of IT skills, whatever you do every day is part of your spiritual life. Right livelihood. There is no part of life which is not part of our spiritual practice. So if you have a goal that you have set, then everything you do ultimately goes towards that goal, like a river towards the ocean. So this first section of blessings that I very quickly went through contains all the injunctions, all the prerequisites to help you skip or jump or avoid impediments for you to attain a good career, good works, and noble life. So, for example, if you do not have good friends, good relatives, then it's going to be difficult. you might well have taken a dichotomy which will lead you to a completely different end. Then it goes on to have a good education, to be proficient at work, to follow a code of discipline, to practice pleasant speech. Now, these are the conditions which will lead to great blessings, great happiness, avoiding pain and suffering. Now, if you look at all the 38, you will find that none of them are religious. That is zero, just like the Eightfold Path. There's nothing religious in the Eightfold Path. There's nothing religious here. They are all secular teachings. Proficiency in a handicraft, a vocation, a science, a skill. No one owes us a living. You can't pray to get 5 distinctions in your HSC. To get 5 distinctions in your HSC, you have to work hard for it. You can't pray to have success in mundane things. If you want to have that, you jolly well work hard for that. So a wholesome life, a wholesome lay life with a good career is a great blessing. And so not only is knowledge praised, the way you can go on to attain this knowledge is clearly marked out by the Buddha. Now, this is another important concept that the Buddha taught in another sutta, righteous wealth. There's nothing wrong with being rich, provided you earn your wealth in a harmless occupation that does not make you break the 5 precepts. Then the wealth that you have earned is righteous wealth by the strength of your arm, sweat of your brow. And the Buddha in other suttas even teach you how to use that wealth. Then it goes on to support our parents, to take care of our spouse and children. Here I want to emphasize, notice it's singular. 2,600 years ago, that would have been unusual. All right? To have occupations which do not cause harm, a peaceful occupation. This is a great blessing. All right? So family life is a great blessing. Take care of your parents, take care of your children, make sure they have a good education. That's a great blessing. Now, unfortunately, with modernization, people do not always look after nor care personally for their parents, instead sending them to an institution. That's very common. Contrast this with the Buddhist teachings, that our debt to our parents is so great that it can never be repaid by material support. The Buddha said the only way we can repay is that if we teach them the Buddha Dharma, teach them what is wholesome. And you need not even name it the Buddha Dharma, that's just a label. You teach them what is wholesomeness, what is reality, what is truth. And the Buddha called our parents Brahma, because someone asked the Buddha, where is Brahma? Because in the Indian culture 2,600 years ago, they believed in a creator God whom they named Brahma. And well, of course, this exists even today. And so someone asked the Buddha, where is Brahma? And the Buddha in that discourse told this person, you go home, knock on your house door, and the one who opens your house door is your Brahma. And so when the person went home, knocked on the door, his parents opened the door for him. And the Buddha said, it is much better. Pay respect, pay homage, take care of your Brahma at home with service and loving kindness, instead of worshipping an unknown, unseen, speculative Brahma somewhere up in the sky. And then the sutta goes on to be charitable, to practice virtuous conduct, to be of help to relatives and friends. This goes beyond family. Earlier we were speaking about parents, wife, children, and now we talk about relatives and friends. To be blameless in actions in your social interaction, social services. And this is a great blessing. Now, apart from material offerings that people are familiar with, because a lot of people, whenever we talk about material help or help, people think, clothes, money, etc. But offerings can be far more than that. Just a friendly smile, good morning, generous nature, a mind full of loving kindness. Ask yourself, did you treat the security guard at your gated premise good morning? Did you say thank you when he passed you your Shopee parcel? Or do you treat him as just another worker? Did you treat him as a human? To me, to many of my Dhamma family here, this is very important. When the waiter comes to serve you food here, did you say thank you to the waiter? And this is very strongly marked in my memory. Because when I was a young man, a certain person took me out and me and my wife out for dinner at a posh restaurant in JB. And so this humble waiter was serving, and he just remarked to my hostess and said, "Auntie, would you like to have this?" And my hostess turned around and said, "Who is your auntie? Don't call me auntie." Now that struck very strongly in my mind, in my wife's mind. It's almost like a star that burned into our consciousness. Because it was very obvious that our host looked at waiters, waitresses, etc., as below them. I think that as Buddhists, our dana is far more than offering at a temple, offering robes, etc. Our monks have more than enough robes. I think that our dana, if you want to be an example, is to treat everyone who the Buddhist teaching teaches interrelated and interconnected as your equal. Whether it's the man collecting the rubbish at your condominium, or the security guard at your gated community, or the janitor in your office, a smile, a wholesome word will teach and show them metta far more than all the metta you can chant in the privacy of your room. Then the sutta goes on to talk about abstaining from evil, to have no desire for evil, to abstain from intoxicants, and to be diligent in wholesome practice and steadfast in virtue. I think 18, 19, and 21 is something familiar, so I would just emphasize on number 20. Be kind, be gentle, and make peace in every moment. I think this is a wonderful t-shirt. I think number 20 is very important because many people underplay the importance of this condition or this auspicious sign, to abstain from intoxicants. Now, you know, all that the sutta has been teaching us so far requires that we have clarity of mind, we have awareness or mindfulness, and anything which is going to lead to the opposite, whether swallowed, whether injected, smoked, or drank, is not going to be very helpful. So we want to have a clear mind, and these substances just lead to more foolishness. A very common question I get asked is, "Oh, Brother Punna, what if it's just a small amount? You know, I have to entertain, or I have to do business, or, you know, I just take a small amount and I won't get drunk." Or someone tells me very commonly, "Oh, I attend a birthday function or a wedding dinner. Well, it's just a few cups. And how many wedding dinners are there? You know, maybe once a month or something like that." Well, my answer all these years for the last 2-3 decades has been the same. And I always ask the person who asked me this question, "Can you be a little bit pregnant?" Well, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. And if you're pregnant, it's just going to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's the same with any form of intoxicants. You develop addiction, tolerance, and you need more and more to achieve the same thing. So you cannot be a little bit pregnant. And I think that the Buddha's advice for us to abstain is well given advice. To have reverence, to be humble, to be content, to be grateful, and to hear the Dhamma at the right time. This is a right condition that will lead to happiness. Reverence, humility, contentment, gratefulness, these are marks of a matured mind. And the more you advance along the spiritual path, the more you realize that the I, the ego, is just a creation that we want to believe in. The further down the spiritual path, the smaller the I becomes. You begin to realize that you are what you are, not because you are so great, but because of a million other things from all the things in your environment that have contributed to what you are. You are just a little cog in that big wheel. And when you realize anatta, or non-self, the more humble you become, the more reverence you have for all the others that are interconnected. In the Heart Sutta, it says, 无执, 无智以无得. Ultimately, you realize you don't attain anything because there is no one to attain anything. If a lot of pride and conceit is present, then you certainly have not got very far. Early in my walk in the Buddhist path, a venerable taught me that when I speak, when someone speaks, when someone is teaching the Dhamma, he used to take out a piece of blank paper and a ball pen, and he will write down the number of I's the speaker had said. So he kept score as the speaker was talking, and I was talking. He made, every time I said the word I, he write down I, 1, then 2, then 3. At the end of which he showed me and he said, you have used the I X number of times in this sharing. What he was trying to teach me is this very simple, profound lesson that the Buddha is trying to teach us here. Contentment spells peace of mind for the person who entered. Remember, to be content. Craving spells out the opposite. Now, it is very important for us to realize that this blessing should not be misunderstood as counsel to just lie there and wait to die and not do anything in life. Please note the position in the sequence that has been given to you. This is after your education, your career, your vocation, taking care of family, etc., that we have actually gone through. And now at this point, the reverence to humble, to be content, to be grateful. And then we go on to have patience, to listen to advice, to associate with monks and spiritual teachers, not to pray to them, there's nothing to pray to discuss and talk about the Dhamma, not to pray to the Dhamma. This is a great blessing. Now, patience at the top. Patience finds expression as a serene attitude towards stresses, which enables us to accept with equanimity the flow of events. It also gives us time to choose the right response or the most appropriate response. And so with these impressions entering the mind from the sense doors cannot upset the peace within. And so one goes on serenely with life. Now here I want to talk about the word kanti. In both the Theravada and the Mahayana tradition, this is an important perfection, paramita. And very often again, this word is translated as to endure. And that's a very nasty translation, because kanti is not to endure. Kanti is acceptance. And there's a very big difference between acceptance and to endure. To endure means, actually, if I can, I wall up this fellow, I just tahan him only. It's completely different from acceptance. Acceptance is when you open your arms and you say, whatever you do, the door of my heart is open to you. I accept it. To endure means if I can, I'm going to bash the brains out of you, but I tahan lah. So it's a completely different thing. Kanti is acceptance. We develop this parami of acceptance. Now, calmness, equanimity, not flustered or impatient, marks the mental state of the spiritually advanced person. While the hot-headedness shows how spiritually immature the person is. Now, I come to the part where the emphasis is given to me, and that is the last 8 blessings. What are the last 8 blessings? To practice self-restraint or a chaste life, to live the holy life by the Eightfold Path, to understand the Four Noble Truths, and to realize Nibbana. I want you to pay attention to number 34, to realize Nibbana. After number 34 comes the last 4, to be unaffected by worldly conditions, to be free from sorrow, to be free from defilements, to have lasting peace, security, liberated from fear. Now, this is very, very important. Please note number 34 is to realize Nibbana. And then you have 35, 36, 37, 38. This is very, very important. I will go through it slowly. So number 31, to practice self-restraint and a chaste life. If you are a lay person, then of course it's the 5 precepts. If you are a member of the Sangha, then of course it's a chaste life, brahmacharya. To live the holy life by the Noble Eightfold Path, try and understand the Four Noble Truths, and then you will realize Nibbana. With this, these are the conditions for the greatest liberation, happiness, absence of suffering. Now, what's the secret to a long life, O wise one? Well, don't smoke, don't drink, have a good career, etc., etc. Don't worry. But the secret to happiness is an entirely different matter. This last part now deals with the supramundane. This is the part that not only gives you success, happiness in lay life, mundane life, this is the part that makes you not the same anymore. You are going to be changed irreversibly if you understand this last bit. So, Sila, we just chanted the 5 precepts. That's for self-restraint. Now, for anyone who is unawakened, yes, we definitely need precepts to guide us. They are like the traffic lights. Do not cross when it's red or you're in trouble. Cross when it is green. And sensual desires may cause much mundane joys, but sensual desires also give rise to lots of suffering. Now, the most powerful form of sensual desire is, of course, the sexual desire. That is what made us survive as Homo sapiens 200,000 to 300,000 years on Earth, because of this drive. And it's a very powerful form of sensuality. And if unregulated, well, equally powerful cause of trouble. So it must be first checked by precepts. And of course, once you awaken and you have the wisdom, then precepts are not needed anymore. For lay people, of course, sex is limited to that within the husband and wife relationship. Now, it talks about the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths. And one way of knowing more about the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, of course, is to study, first and foremost, the spiritual teachings. And we are so blessed nowadays that the translations are getting better. The mistakes in the translations are raised up many a time and brought to our attention. Just for example, Ajahn Brahm had repeatedly emphasized that Sama Samadhi is not right concentration, it's stillness, and etc., etc. So many other teachers had pointed out almost impossible to change mistranslations. So if you learn from them, then that accelerates your progress. Similarly, the books, we started with the Pali Text Society translations, which I still see in many centers. And that's written in late 19th century, early 20th century English, which is really very difficult to understand. Just to give you an example, when I was in school, the word gay means happy. Now the word gay has a completely different meaning. Now, English evolves as time passes. Now, the most recent translations of the Nikayas by Bhante Sujato, for example, I notice use much more plain English compared to even Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. And Bhante Sujato's translation of the four Nikayas is, I think, available in almost all the centers now. All right. If you are a very serious student, you can even request for a set. So learn the spiritual teachings, converse on the Dhamma, have a nice Kayanamitta group, meet regularly for meals, and of course we chit-chat about everything under the sun, but we also talk about Dhamma and we support each other. And along the way, make sure we stay within the Eightfold Path and have a deeper understanding of the Four Noble Truths. But as I said, you accelerate that progress when you learn from people who have spent time studying it, practicing it. Now, this very important statement at number 34, to realize Nibbana, I had changed the word actually from attain to realize. And I intentionally changed the word. Because again, the old translations use the word to attain Nibbana. Now, to attain, again, in the English language, will imply that it is there, and I've gone, I've reached it, I have taken it, I have attained it. That is not what Nibbana is. You do not go somewhere and get Nibbana. You do not travel on the road and reach Nibbana. Nibbana is here now within you. And Nibbana is described as happiness, security, and the deathless state. The word Nibbana comes from two particles, one na meaning stop, and the second one meaning to blow or to extinguish. So Nibbana is the extinguishing or blowing out or the cooling of the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance. Some of you may be familiar with the fire sermon, a very popular sutta. And it tells of how all our senses are on fire, all our sense bases are on fire. Nibbana is the opposite. It is the extinguishing, the blowing out of this fire of greed, hatred, and ignorance. And so what happens when you have the extinguishing or blowing out of the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance? You have liberation, freedom. I shared this at Mudita, so Wei Li will probably remember. The Four Noble Truths have actually two sets of pathways. We are all familiar with the Fourth Noble Truth, and we say, oh, that's the Noble Eightfold Path. But the Second Noble Truth is also a path. So you have the First Noble Truth, which describes unhappiness, insecurity, birth, aging, sickness, death, decay, etc. That's the First Noble Truth. In the Second Noble Truth, it tells you why we go on to a state of unhappiness, insecurity, birth, aging, sickness, decay, death, etc. And in the Second Noble Truth, it tells you it is due to an emotion called tanha, or craving, or attachment. Now you come to the Third Noble Truth, which tells you that you can blow out or cool or extinguish this fire of greed, hatred, and ignorance. So how do you cool down, blow out, extinguish this? You follow the fourth noble truth, which is the Eightfold Path. Now, given a cohort of people and you give them a choice, would you like to follow the second noble truth, or would you like to follow the fourth noble truth? Most people will choose to follow, consciously or unconsciously, the second noble truth. Because the second noble truth of the satisfaction of craving gives them immediate happiness, relief, immediate gratification. So, for example, someone craves very badly for something, let's say a new car, a new wife, etc. Really intensely crave for it. So he walks along that path which will lead to the new car, the new wife, the new whatever, not satisfied with his old one. And then he gets it. Immediately he is gratified. But that gratification is short-lived, and it leads to the first noble truth. It is only those who understand to some degree that will choose to walk the fourth noble truth, the Eightfold Noble Path. And if you do that, it leads to the progressive cooling, stilling, extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and ignorance. And when that is done, achieved, you get happiness, security, and the deathless state. You are now free, liberated. So Nibbana is described as the highest happiness, the supreme state of bliss. Number 34. You realize Nibbana. And those who realize Nibbana live not in the future, not at death, but now in utter bliss, free from hatred and mental illness among those who are hateful and mentally ill. And when they finally die in this life, because they do not grasp another birth, their state after passing away is unborn. They are now completely liberated. So, remember, when you realize Nibbana, immediate result, akaliko. The Dhamma is akaliko. Every time you chant the qualities of the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, we chant Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Santitiko Akaliko. But we chant it so often it becomes a meaningless ritual. I always say the instant it becomes meaningless, stop doing it. You're not achieving anything other than deluding yourself. Every time you chant the word akaliko, it tells you that the Dhamma is immediate. The instant you realize the Four Noble Truths, the two paths within, you realize the Fourth Noble Truth, and you realize the Third Noble Truth of the stilling and the cooling, the extinguishing of greed, hatred, ignorance. The immediate result is you will be now unaffected by worldly conditions, freed from sorrow, freed from defilements, to have lasting peace and security, liberated from fear. So the ultimate goal of Buddhism, of the Buddha Dharma, is not eternal death. A very eminent person in the West said, what are these silly Buddhists doing? They're searching for eternal death. No. The ultimate goal of Buddhism is not eternal death, because there is no one to die in the first place. We are just activity, not an entity. The ultimate goal is liberation. And that liberation is not next life, future life, or when you die. That liberation is now. Let me just give you another example. Someone is sick. Okay, my wife was sick. Initially, very feared that it might be something really horrible. Whole family affected, everybody was concerned. It sounds horrible, it looks horrible. Biopsy also come back very scary. Repeat scans, very scary. I had to slow down my whole life, and she had to slow down her whole life because we got to pay attention to solving that problem. But there was something that made a big difference, which she herself confessed. She had no fear. Why? Why? There are many among us who are sick right now. Now, most people, when told that you have a serious illness, will have fear. Oh, am I going to die? What will I be in my next life? What will I be? What will I? What will happen to me? Etc. 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 But when you understand the Dhamma, when you have even just a glimpse of Nibbana, you often hear this expression, Brother SK, a glimpse of Nibbana. I always ask people, you hear this expression so often, what do you mean by a glimpse of Nibbana? When you even have just a glimpse of Nibbana, when you understand what the Buddha meant, no birth, no death, 不生不灭不垢不净不增不减. When you understand what the Buddha taught, then you will be unaffected by worldly conditions, freed from sorrow, freed from defilements, and you have lasting peace and security, liberated from fear. That is why it is at number 34. Once you have studied the Buddha Dharma, you have tried to understand it, and you have understood it to some degree, you had a glimpse of Nibbana, number 35, 36, 37, 38 will naturally follow. So to those who are very ill right now listening in, have no fear, because if you tell me you truly understand the Buddha Dharma, birth and death is only concepts. In the Buddha Dharma, there is no birth, there is no death. That is just activity. If you understand, there is no fear. Now, this is the greatest blessing, because now you are liberated. You are freed from that which terrorizes 99.9% of the population. Worldly conditions are inevitable in life. And the Buddha said this includes gain and loss, fame and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. None of us can escape these common denominators. You are all going to make money. You're all going to lose money. You're all going to have some degree of fame. And at some point, someone will disagree with you and say you're a bloody fool. You're a deviant. It's all right. You will be praised by some, blamed by some. And of course, in life, we have pleasure and pain. So while the unawakened grasp the pleasant halves and reject the unpleasant, with realization, you will not be shaken by either of the halves. Remember, dear Dhamma family, dependent origination, the 12th link begins with ignorance. Now you are breaking the very first link in dependent origination. Now you know. And once you know, your whole attitude towards these are going to change. It is not kanti as endurance. It is kanti as acceptance. We accept it. This is life. 是这样的。The word Dhamma in Chinese, 法. How is it written in Chinese? Li Xia will know. On the left side, 3 dots of water. On the right side, to move forward, to go out. like water around rocks. It flows in the path of least resistance. It doesn't fight against the rocks. It flows in the path of least resistance. And there will be many rocks in our lives. We move along like water. That's far, teaching you how to move so that you have acceptance and the minimal of discomfort. So we develop equanimity and acceptance towards it all. So the marks of gain and loss, the marks of fame and disgrace, the marks or the signs of praise and blame, pleasure and pain, the unawakened grasps it. To the awakened, we do not grasp at these marks. So whether it is a BMW or a Mercedes, whether it is a small car, big car, medium-sized car, now you got BMW, Mercedes, you pay through your nose for petrol. Small car, less suffering, etc. You do not grasp at the marks or the signs. So to be unaffected by worldly conditions, to be free from sorrow, to be free from defilements, to have lasting peace and security, liberated from fear. All this liberation is not in some distant future, but now. And I emphasize again, number 34, to realize Nibbana. 35, 36, 37, 38. This is the result. So if Brother Whaley wants to know how far have I progressed on this path, look at 35, 36, 37, 38. How far, Brother Whaley? Are you unaffected by this? You notice I changed the word after the word be in 36 and 37 to be in the present tense and not past tense. In English, what follows the word be is in past tense. So you should be to be freed from sorrow. I think that in our present context, I prefer it to be free because it is ongoing. It is not something past. So with no grasping at marks, when you don't grasp at the signs of gain and loss, pleasure and pain, etc., when you don't grasp at them, when you let go, das unmoving. And why? Das unmoving in the Diamond Sutra is ru putong. No matter what the condition, Sister Licia, ru putong. I'm not referring to your physical body, but to your mind. No matter what the condition of gain and loss, pleasure and pain, blame and praise, etc., ru putong. Your mind remains still. Sama samadhi. All conditioned dhammas, small d, all conditioned phenomena are like dreams, illusions, bubbles, shadows, like dewdrops and a lightning flash. This is how we contemplate it. Anicca, impermanence. Dukkha, anatta. So the sutta ends with this line: those who perform such auspicious deeds are undefeated by all enemies. Enemies here not just referring to physical enemy, but to degeneration of the body, illness, sickness, gain, loss, etc. And you are happy in whatever condition that you are in. COVID-19, still less happy. Monkeypox, still less happy. The word life, L-I-F-E, has the word I-F in the middle. Life is dependent on 1,000 ifs, I-F, if not more. You can't control it, and neither can be absolutely predicted. So there will be the ups and downs. And so as long as you perform these auspicious deeds, you are undefeated by these enemies within inverted commas. And you gain happiness everywhere. Ru putong. You are liberated from the fear of death, of birth, or even a future life. It might be good or bad. because now you know. These are the greatest blessings. So now, when you understand this, it is like a glimpse that you see in this picture. I took this picture at Kota Tinggi as I was walking in the little semi-forest in the early morning sunrise, where light suddenly shone and broke through the trees. Then when you understand this, it is actually like suddenly light has entered darkness. You may be sick from a physical illness. You might be degenerating with painful knees. You might have all kinds of things that you can't control afflicting you, but you can still enjoy the ultimate because now you know. And gain happiness everywhere. So Charlie Brown, this cartoon is one of my favorite, or rather this particular comic strip. He was asked, what would you say you want most out of life, Charlie Brown? To be happy? Oh no, Charlie Brown says, I don't expect that. I really don't. I just don't want to be unhappy. And I think this speaks it out. If you go around chasing after happiness, you'll never be able to be content. Kanti, acceptance, understanding. So the 38 blessings in summary, the first part begins with you trying to get an education, trying to develop a career, trying to establish yourself, having goals in your life to be on the right path, okay? How you behave socially, and then your responsibilities, parents, spouse, children, occupation, your social engagement, charitable, virtuous conduct, helping of relatives and friends, blameless action, and abstaining from evil, no desire from evil, avoiding intoxicants, to be diligent and steadfast in virtue, to have reverence, humble, content, grateful, and of course, learn the Dhamma, to have patience, to listen to advice, and to associate with those. Now, when you associate, as I said, you accelerate your progress. And finally, the last 8, Sila, living the holy life. I told you there are 2 paths in the Four Noble Truths. Are you choosing the second noble truth, or are you choosing the 4th noble truth? And I say it again, most people consciously or unconsciously actually choose the second noble truth because we want immediate gratification. To understand the Four Noble Truths, I tried my best to realize Nibbana at number 34. And even if you have all a glimpse like that light breaking through in the forest, you are liberated to some extent. To be unaffected by worldly conditions, to be free from sorrow, to be free from defilements, to have lasting peace and security, liberated from fear. So the more you attain the 3rd noble truth, the more you cool the fire, the more you still the emotions, the more you extinguish the flames, the more liberation. That's why Ajahn Chah said, letting go a little, little happiness. Letting go a lot, lot of happiness. Letting go a little, little liberation. Letting go a lot of liberation. Remember, Sister Esther, Sister Siok Ching, Sister Licia, just 3 I'm picking off, right off my mind. Even a little glimpse will help you tolerate the dissatisfactions of life. It will help you be unaffected by the 8 winds. Remember, the instant you say you are unaffected by the 8 winds, you are already awakened. In Chinese, the expression is 八风不动. That means I am no longer affected by the 8 winds. In other words, you're telling people I am awakened. Okay, to be unaffected by the worldly conditions, to be free from sorrow, to be free from defilements. Remember, Nibbana has been called the sorrowless state. Not in the future, Not after you are dead, but now. Highest happiness. Now, freedom from fear. So this discourse is a GPS outlining personal progress in mundane life, family responsibilities, social obligations, moral purification, and spiritual cultivation. It's a chart that shows us the milestones of progress on the stormy sea of life. With regards to 34, you have to do it yourself. No one can drag you. You have to see. The Dhamma is everywhere. You just look around. Look at your husband. Look at your wife. That's Dhamma. Look at your work. That's Dhamma. Look at your social circle. That's Dhamma. And if you can see it, it is truly everywhere. So with that, I thank you. I thank my Kayana meeters. I thank my Dhamma family, Malaysia, Singapore, everywhere, Indonesia. I thank you for inviting me to do this sharing. And with that, I hope that I had helped you understand this a little bit more. At least I can help you understand a little through the pains that other people had realized or gone through. Okay? A wise person learns from the mistakes of others. The fool will go through those mistakes very painfully. All right. With that, thank you, SK, for inviting me, and I will stop the sharing now.